Hello, everyone. We're doing some learning together again. My name is Nikki Woodford. I am the Coordinator of Instructional Assistive Technology in Sturgeon Public Schools. And in this session, we are going to take a look at some EdTech specific strategies for limiting disengagement that might be happening. So we're just going to call it blocking the escape hatch. You will notice that there is a bit.ly link to access the slides. I will leave that bit.ly link live. So if at any point there are resources or the tips or suggestions or the maybe some hyperlinks that I've added in here, they will remain available. Okay, so in our time together, we are going to take a look at some strategies to minimize disengagement. In this particular season, we're just starting to notice some trends. We're starting to notice that the honeymoon period is over. And so just what are some of the things that we can do about it? But I do want to just identify a couple of things. That first of all, I would, if I were to label it, I might say that this would be an intermediate type session. Again, not because what we're doing is super technical, but because of the nature of the conversation is a little bit more reflective. We're digging a little bit deeper than just a basic conversation on how to, or what does this mean, or what are the things to do. And we're just digging deeper, both into just reflection and pedagogy. And then of course there are just some inherent, tips that we talk about. So that's that. And the other thing that I want to note is that engagement, we want engagement to happen at all levels and in all content areas, and so that this is also a conversation that's applicable for all grades, for all subjects, because of course we want engaged students at all grades and in all subjects. So just to be clear on that one. So what we're going to do together is we're just going to talk about kind of disengagement as evidence. So really speaking to the concept of engagement first, and making sure that we have a little bit of a common understanding, because it's broad. There's been lots of research about engagement. And then we will talk more specifically on the strategies. We're going to break the strategies into two different areas. One is strategies for connecting, and then the other is strategies for kind of that teaching and learning. Okay. Now, to build some common understanding, first of all, when we consider the concept of engagement, we want to understand that engagement is not just about compliance. It is not just noticing that the kids are doing exactly what you ask them to. That is not engagement. That is compliance. Engagement is kind of twofold. One, that there is cognitive investment. So students are invested both kind of with thinking in their learning, like they're invested with their brain and those cognitive processes, but they're also invested because there's an interest or an enjoyment. So if we are looking at completion and we're looking at compliance, then we're not necessarily seeing an interest or an enjoyment in it. It is simply following through because they are expected to, okay? So to be clear, when we talk engagement, we are talking both of those things, both the cognitive investment and that there's the enjoyment, that they are really participating in it because there's something that appeals to them about it. Now, the other thing that I want to note about engagement is that it is not up to the student primarily to be engaged. And so it's not whether the student has a trait to be engaged or not engaged, but in fact, the teacher does play a role in engagement. And that is kind of, there is a relationship dance, so to speak, right? That there's an interplay, an exchange, that the teacher participates in this engagement process. It is not just an expectation that the student be engaged regardless of what the teacher does. So when teaching and learning is happening, the teacher plays a role in engagement, okay? It is not simply left up to the student to be engaged or disengaged. And the teacher is not removed from this. Okay? So as we kind of continue to talk about engagement, let me move that back out of the way. then we need to remember from where we've come. Again, the season in which we find ourselves is looking very different. So we do have to consider the changes that have happened. So when we were teaching in a classroom with students, then the things that we would be looking at as evidence for engagement would have been things like attendance, first and foremost. If a student is not attending repeatedly, then that would be evidence that they are not engaged in their learning. But when they are in class, we might be looking at things like body language, interaction, how we are interacting with the student. And as we are teaching and kind of working in this environment, we're monitoring how the students are responding, and we're monitoring all of these pieces of evidence, evaluating, or do they appear to be engaged, disengaged? Do I need more data? And again, this is an ongoing just kind of process that happens. And then teachers are making adjustments. Okay, so it looks like this kiddo is disengaged, and so do I need to make some adjustments to help support them so that we can get them engaged again in the learning? Okay. Now, we need to back up a little bit to extend our view, because when we see a student in a classroom, because they are present, we are often assuming that because they are present, that the student is available, they are ready, they're in a place where they are okay to learn. And what we're doing is we're taking just a quick look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And what we need to know is that in order for a student to even be accessible to learning, that these other levels of needs need to be met. Their physiological needs need to be met regularly. Their safety needs need to be met regularly. Belonging, esteem, all of those things need to be met. And so if we see evidence that a student is engaged in class, so there is an exchange back and forth, they are present, the data you are getting from them shows that they are learning, then we will make an assumption that for the most part, all these other levels are being met. Great. And so the kind of the teaching and the learning can continue. All systems seem to be go. Now, if we are getting evidence that the student is disengaged, in other words, they are not in a place where they are not in a place where they are ready to learn, then we need to take a look and suggest that maybe there are other things going on, and it is not simply a matter of engagement or just being re-engaged. So in some cases, the teacher can do things to loop the student back in, because again, remember, it's a relationship. The teacher plays a role in engagement. So in some cases, if I tweak some things with my practice, if I adjust the way that I'm doing things, then I can re-engage the kiddo because all the other needs are met. But we also need to be mindful that no matter what the dance we do, we could perform all we like. We can make things as interesting, as interactive, as, like all of the research around effective pedagogy. We can do all of those things, but it is still entirely possible that these other needs are not being met. And so the student is not ready to learn. So we need to be mindful of both the individual student, and we need to be mindful of our practice. Okay? So it's a little bit of a close view of our own practice, and it is a little bit of a wide view of the student. And really what we want to do in this session today is we want to nail or kind of eliminate the things that might cause a student to be disengaged with curriculum and with learning. So that if a student is showing disengagement, it's not in fact because of our practice. It's more that something is happening here. And so we're just, again, using the data effectively and then narrowing down the cause. Okay? So it's really a holistic look at each of the students that we have in our classes. Now, I will probably refer back to this, because as we start to talk about the strategies for engaging, because of the season that we are in, We need to remember what the students have lost because we are now kind of executing teaching and learning using a distance online model. And what in many cases, students were coming to school, yes, for the content, yes, for the curriculum, but there were other pieces that the kids were coming for too. Their friends, peers, social interactions, positive relationships with adults. There were all of these things that were built into the school environment and the school experience, and that they are now not there anymore. And so as we continue to take a look at these strategies for connecting, what we're really doing is we're starting to address perhaps these needs that students may have lost because they are now doing their school at home. So, relationships with adult role models, peers, friends. We're looking at some strategies to integrate that back in, okay? So let's take a look at what some of those could be. So the first one, screen time is less, as I go back here real quick, screen time, as I talk about that one, that is not so much here. It's actually here under physiological and how it impacts physiological need. So let's talk about that. There is research that has been released over the last couple of years discussing how extended screen time is having a detrimental effect. It is negatively impacting sleep and quality of sleep. And so whether it's adults or youth or children, if there is too much screen time, then in fact, then children and adults are getting less, it's poor quality sleep and less sleep. The research is also tying higher amounts or lengthy periods of screen time is having a negative impact on just self-esteem, on peer social relationships, and even just having the appropriate skill to have appropriate peer relationships. And so now certainly there's research around other detrimental effects, and I will continue to point to Dr. Michael Rich. I will continue to point to the Growing Up Digital project conducted by the ATA, and to Dr. Jean Twenge-Gay's research. And so all of these pieces are indicating the negative impact of extended screen time. So the strategy that I'm suggesting here is that where possible, that you are encouraging students and giving them tasks and activities that do not always have to rely on a screen. So despite the fact that we are doing our teaching and learning online, that is how the exchange is happening primarily, that you can still be giving students activities that do not rely on a screen. And so the work could be done by hand and by paper. It could be tactile, there could be manipulatives, there could be experiments, all of these things where it does not require a screen, or where students are conducting interviews. Like, there's a number of different activities that does not require a screen, and where possible that you are including those in. But I would add, you need to be direct. You need to explicitly say, and now I want you to close your screen. And now I want you to turn your computer off and do this task. And when you are done, you can come back to the computer. Because the kids, regardless of whether they are high school or whether they are primary, they do not have the skill to know when to turn it off. And so you actually need to tell them, okay? So that's one strategy. Another strategy is to turn on your camera. So as you are preparing lessons and creating tutorial videos and using Screencastify to create lessons, then I would strongly encourage you to turn on the camera. And here's why. When you are in the classroom with your kiddos, they saw you. They saw your face. They joked with you. They saw you smile. They heard you. And if all you are doing now is providing content via Seesaw or Google Classroom and expecting content back or assessments back through Google Classroom, then the relationship you had with your kids is now being reduced to this exchange of information back and forth. And the kiddos will suggest that the relationship part of the teacher and student is gone. And now that's all that's being asked of them is work. And they will be less motivated to do work for people that don't seem to care about them. And one way to show that you care about them is to show your face. Okay? So where possible, that you are using the camera, turning the camera on to create your screencasts, and even, instead of writing a text in your Google Class, in putting a text post in your Google Classroom saying, this is what I did this weekend, just doing a check-in, how are you guys doing? Make a video instead. It is good for them to see your face, to see you smile, to hear you talk to them, as opposed to just a text post. We need to keep these social interactions going and use tools and strategies to facilitate that, and not just text. Okay, so where possible, use your webcam. And then the next strategy I would suggest is just thinking about different ways to use Google Meet. With the kiddos, another thing, whether they will admit it or not, but certainly the research is suggesting that our kiddos still need opportunity to connect socially. They still need to play games, to connect, to have conversations, to be intrigued. And so instead of using your regular meets as a way to just answer questions and provide help, that you start to use them a lot more strategically to capture engagement. So for example, one thing could be that instead of posting your office hours or saying, I'm going to be available for the whole group to do a Google Meet, that you take a look at your class and your class makeup, and you will probably start to see that there are groups, okay? Kind of those achievement and leveled groups. So there might be a low, a medium, and a high, and that you actually use your Google Meets and schedule time with those exclusive groups. There's a low group, a medium group, and a high group. And so that you're able to connect with them and have meaningful conversation with them, and then the next group, and then the next group. And so you can attend to each kid a little bit better, and you can also demonstrate that, yeah, I'm caring about you and you and you, and I just want time with only you. And so just really customizing your instruction and the learning to these specific groups. Another thing that to do is use your Google Meet, again, less of a Q&A, less of this is about content, and you're using Google Meet more to facilitate that socialization in that community, which is a need that they have, which they may have lost. And so things like play a game. It doesn't have to be a curriculum focused. It could just be we're meeting to play a game. That's all. We're connecting to play a game. Whether it's an online game, whether it is a scavenger hunt game, whether it is, you come up with it. You could use Google Meet to pique their interest. So, for the week of May 10th to May 15th, I'm dressing up as a different character in the novel that we are studying. So you have to come on to guess which character I am. So you're almost having to look at it from a social media influencer kind of way, like you're developing content to connect with the kids in a meaningful way. Another thing could just be giving them a challenge. So, okay, so here's what I did this weekend. And now your challenge is go see if you can do that and then come back. And so it can be go out and do this for 2 minutes and come back, or go do this and then we'll meet tomorrow and you can tell me what you're all about your challenge, whether it's see if you can be kind to 2 other people and tell me what happens. Okay. So again, we're just thinking differently about how we use Google Meet. It is less for curriculum and instruction and could be more to really facilitate those needs that they have around connection, belonging, community, and socialization. All right. Now that we've kind of made sure that all those levels are attended to, let's talk about some strategies for teaching and learning specifically. And the first one is this: keep it simple. If we are using Google Classroom as the way to facilitate the back and forth exchange of content and work and curriculum back and forth between teacher and student, then I would suggest use Google applications to do exactly that. We're not just using Google Classroom. And here's why. If we continue to rely on things like PDFs, things like old sheets that we've used in the past, old lessons, old activities, and they are not, that a Google application is not used to create this, then what you are asking students to do is to jump through hoops. And the more hoops that they have to jump through, the more opportunities there is to exit. The more opportunity they have to just be like, forget it, it's too hard. You're asking me to do too many things just in order to do the curriculum activity. So for example, if we provide students with a PDF where we could just transpose it and put it into a Google Doc, or do a similar activity in a Google form, or we could do it in a series of Google Slides, right? But if we insist on using a PDF, then we are either asking students to add extensions so that they can do the work in there. We are asking them to download, then upload. We are asking them to create a new file and attach it. All of these are extra hoops that the kid has to jump through. And all of these are other ways that the kid can get lost, confused, or just say, it's too hard. The process is too hard. The content I could do, but the process is too hard, and so I'm just not going to do it, okay? So where possible, keep it simple. Use Google tools and Google applications. If you're going to use Google Classroom, then use other G Suite tools as well, because then it's easy. There are fewer hoops for kids to have to jump through. It's just all there and it's easy, okay? This is a newfound favorite of mine. Sad, but it's a favorite. So in the past, when I was creating screencast videos using Screencastify, I would rely on just having them hosted in Google Drive, because it's easy, it's already there, it's not a big deal. I'll just grab the link and go. But here's what I've noticed, is that as I've been posting the videos to YouTube, I've been paying attention to the analytics. And so in the YouTube studio, there are analytics that you can attend to. So I'm just going to pop over there now, move this out of the way. Now, right now, this is the Sturgeon Public Schools Learning Together YouTube channel. So in the top right-hand corner, I'm going to go to the YouTube studio. And this is kind of that back-end view where I can get some additional data, much like a Google form has that back-end data view. And so on the left-hand side, I can now see analytics. I'm going to pop this back over here while this loads. Now, certainly there are some graphs about, certainly the channel, but what I want to pay attention to is the individual videos. So a couple things to notice. First of all, I can see the number of times something has been viewed. So if you know you've got a class of 20 kids and you're seeing that a video's only been viewed 10 times, then you can fairly safely assume that half your class has not watched the video, at least half. The other thing I'm paying attention to is the average view of duration. So this particular video right here, virtual meeting etiquette for students, is 2.5 minutes. That's it, 2.5 minutes. And the average view of duration is 1 minute and 12 seconds. So, we have a nice little announcement. So if I take a look at all of these videos, I can see that barely any of them are getting above 50% where the whole video has been viewed. And so teachers that are saying, oh, but I know, my lesson is 12 minutes. It's only 12 minutes. It's super engaging, and I'm sure that the kids are watching all the way to the end. They totally find it useful. And I would probably suggest, humbly and respectfully, they're probably not. If you start hosting your videos on YouTube, you get some data here that is very interesting, both on what the kids, how often, how much it's being viewed, and, oh, maybe no announcement, and on how long. And so despite the fact that you are certain that your kids are totally watching the whole thing because they totally find it useful, the data will largely speak different. And so here's what I'm going to suggest. Break down your content at the most 5 to 6 minutes. And yes, I know it is perhaps a little bit inconvenient, but it is, your kids and your students will pay attention more to smaller segments than they will to a longer segment. And yes, I know it's an added step, but if you make 15 minutes because it's easy for you, I will promise, certainly not all of your kids, and even if all of them watch it, they're not all going to watch it to the end. That is just what the data says. And these are adults. These are adults watching these videos. So use your video analytics, post it to YouTube Studio, even if it's unlisted, you get data there to speak to what the kids are watching and for how long, and that will also inform your practice. And then you can see, oh, kids are clearly not I can see that the assessment information I'm getting back, the kids don't understand this concept. I wonder why. It's because they're not watching the whole instructional video. Okay, the next strategy that I would suggest is being really mindful about those multiple means of representation. Okay? Again, if we are only just, here's your work, and then you expect to get the work back, then what the kids have lost is all those additional ways that they might be able to understand what's being expected of them and the content itself. Because when you're in the classroom with them, you talk to them, they see you, you might give them images, they can listen to you, they can see videos that you show them. And now if all you do is you give them a series of text and some instructions, and even if there's a video, then there is perhaps not enough for them to totally understand. So while I would bet that teachers are doing a really good job of giving students multiple means of representation, so video, audio, images, text, there's probably a lot of that happening in the lessons. Where I would probably guess there's less of it happening is in the instructions. So when you are giving instructions to them, don't just give it to them in text form. Give them a video or give them an audio file that they would have to listen to as well. Give them a picture or a screenshot of what they have to do. Because otherwise, you may be even losing them before they get out of the gate. And then they're not even getting to the task because they don't understand the instructions. So if you are providing the instructions in multiple ways so that there's no way for them to check out, then the chance of keeping them engaged is better. And then, of course, on the flip side, that what the activity you would be asking of them back, you are being mindful of the multiple means of representation. That you would accept a video as evidence of what they know, an audio clip as evidence of what they know, of an image that they create as evidence. It does not just have to be text-based, because at this point in time, we just need to know if they understand curriculum. But if they understand curriculum, can be demonstrated in multiple ways. In this season, I would challenge you, don't get hung up on format. Where we need to be focused is curriculum, absolutely, but we don't need to be hung up on the format by which they demonstrate curriculum. So assessment can still look different for different kids if that is how they're able to show us what they know. Okay, I think one more strategy and then we're done. This last one is chunking. So I have heard a story of how a teacher has provided 2 weeks worth of content and said, here's all your stuff for 2 weeks. Everything will be due on the Friday in 2 weeks' time. And despite the fact that they might be almost adults at the high school level, the kids do not have these skills. We did this work for them. We must be chunking the work and what we're expecting of them into what is age appropriate for them. So for primary, that might mean these are the chunks of what would be of what you need to complete today. So it might be 30 minutes of this activity, 30 minutes of this activity, 30 minutes of this activity. You have to break it in bite-sized chunks for those primary kiddos. For elementary, it might be here are the things you need to accomplish today, okay? For junior high, here are the things that you need to accomplish by tomorrow. And for high school, I would say you could function probably with a 2 to 3 day chunk. If you give them too much, they will not get it done. Either they will be lazy and assume that they can do it the day before, or they won't know where to begin. They do not have the skills to chunk appropriately. That is our job. We need to do the chunking for them. And so to expect them to chunk it for themselves is a skill that is above them. So you need to chunk it into kind of what is bite size appropriate for their age level. Okay, so I'll just suggest it again. So for primary, I would suggest that is, here are the pieces for today that you need to do. And you might even give like blocks of time. By the end of today, we will have done this. For elementary, here are the things that you've done by the end of today, but perhaps you may not identify how much time dedicated to each task. For junior high, it might be that you can get away with a kind of by tomorrow, here are the things that you will have done. And then for high school, you might give the bite-sized chunks would be 2 to 3 days. If you give them, here's what you need, like here's everything from Monday, and by Friday you need to have all of this complete, it's too much. They will have the skill that you are demanding of them, they do not have this yet. And certainly, even if they do, it was something you probably did not practice with them in a more brick and mortar setting. Okay. All right. So those are some strategies. By all means, could we dig deeper? Yes, we could. Could we talk about engagement at all levels of kind of Maslow? Yes, we could. But in this session, what we're really talking about is what are the things that we can be doing as teachers to make sure that we are not the cause of disengagement. And if we are not the cause, then that gives us some data to perhaps suggest then what can we start to narrow down is the cause. And at that point, then there are other strategies and other protocols in place, contacting home, connecting with the family, connecting with the school team, and following the appropriate procedures in place at the school, okay? But by all means, this is a really good opportunity for us to reflect on our own teaching practice to ensure that we are not the cause and we are not the ones to influence disengagement, okay? And if nothing else, it's really, this is a time where we need to meet the kids where they are at and not just expect that they meet us, because their world has been rocked just like ours has. And so we just want to extend some grace as we all navigate this together. Now here there's some additional resources that'll point you in. Of course, there's our YouTube channel where we continue to post resources to. The continuing learning, I will reference this website, again, being mindful of the recommendations released by Alberta Education. Our Edmonton Catholic and our Black Gold colleagues that have created a number of templates that you can use. And then here's just some additional research that if you want to reference around here's evidence coming out around the things that are good practice versus things that are proving to be barriers, okay? So as we finish up our time together, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for all the work that you are doing. Thank you for the way that you are just really attending to the needs of your students, for the way that you are learning and growing yourselves. You are all doing such good work. And it really is such a pleasure to be a colleague with you. Now, if you have any questions or you want to chat this one through further, or you want to brainstorm some ideas together, by all means, please feel free to contact me. But for now, we'll sign off and just say thank you. It continues to be just such a pleasure to learn together with you. Take care.